Okay, we're in the middle of chapter 13. It's the Chitas for the 19th day of Teves. And at the end of what we did last week, we have answered one of the first questions of all of Tanya. You recall that Tanya begins with the quote of the oath which is administered to every neshama prior to its being dispatched into this world, which is that its mission is to be a tzaddik, um, and never to be a rasha. And even if the whole world is telling you you're a tzaddik, be in your eyes like a rasha. And then we raised the question that it says in Pirkei Avos, in chapter 2 of Pirkei Avos, one should never consider himself a rasha. And not only does that appear to be a conflict, but also conceptually, if a person thinks he's a rasha, one of two negative consequences can come from that. One is he gives up. Well, forget it. I'm a rasha. What's the point of even trying? Or he becomes irreverent. So I'm a rasha. Big deal. Neither one of those is a proper, healthy, godly behavior. So we have now finally answered the first question. That if we look closely, the oath is giving us a strategy that one should consider himself, and the emphasis here is like a rasha, not that he is a rasha. How is he like a rasha? And here the Alter Rebbe concluded in last week's lesson that even if he has defeated his animal soul every single time his whole life, it is quite possible that he has not in any way diminished the impact and the stature and the ferociousness of that animal soul. And therefore, if he lets his guard down, even for a moment, he's vulnerable to that animal soul coming back and seizing control of his thoughts or his speech or his action. We then, that is outside of the text, raise the question. Based on this, we might ask sort of a two-pronged question. First of all, why is it valuable to see yourself like a tzaddik, like a rasha? Either way, you have to do the same thing. You have to learn Torah, do mitzvahs. What does a tzaddik have to do? Learn Torah, do mitzvahs. What does a rasha have to do? Learn Torah, do mitzvahs. So why is there a value in how a person considers himself? And since this guy thinks, speaks, and acts like a tzaddik, and he struggles like a rasha, why is it specifically that he has to think of himself like a rasha? He could just as legitimately think of himself like a tzaddik. So tell him, even though the whole world's telling you you're a tzaddik, be in your eyes that you're only like a tzaddik. That would also be a legitimate perspective. So we explain that there is a value in a person knowing their stature. It's a cautious one, but there is a value. Just like a professional, whether it's a surgeon or it's a plumber or a mechanic, can trust their instinct. Now, we as a society have a tendency to overtrust ourselves, to overthink or over-evaluate our status and say, well, if I feel it, it must be right. And that's a flaw that we may have an over sense of confidence. Concurrently, there is a certain value to a person saying, I've done this many times. I have a certain sense. And why can't you teach that? Okay, that is a value. There's a story told of a chassid. His name was Moshe Leib from Sosov, and he once spent an entire night with gamblers in the hope of bringing them to tshuva. Now you say, well, you're not allowed to go to gamblers. So you'll start gambling. You'll start being lured into that whole milieu and so on. But since he felt the strength of his being a tzaddik, he could take that risk. Now, again, we have to caution against overestimating ourselves. What we see is there is a value. There is a value to when we can start to trust ourselves. Why do we say that we should always consider ourselves like the rasha? Why don't we say we should always consider ourselves like the tzaddik? So the first answer is quite simply, the whole world is telling him he's a tzaddik. So that part of his identity, that's affirmed already, meaning to use our modern parlance that the person should have low self-esteem. Well, that's already addressed because the whole world is telling him you're a tzaddik, so that part is addressed. So it needs to be balanced by him being in his mind like a rasha. Secondly, since his character is like the rasha, meaning his behavior is like the tzaddik, but his essential character is more like the Russia. That is, he has this struggle. So if we had to put him, or if there's a value in putting him on the spectrum, that bias is towards Russia more than it is towards tzaddik. And then we get to the one that's really going to be the point that we're going to be talking about here. The process goes: an instinct, an impulse, a desire, buy me, take me, get me, begins in the reactive heart. Every kid sees that. Can I have this? Can you buy me this? Can I have that? Right? That's why they have candy at the checkout aisle, so the kid can say, can I have this? Can I have that? Can I have this? And then that impulse goes to the brain because it wants to figure out, how do I get it? And then the brain, which is the home field, the seat of the godly soul, says, hold on, you're not going to. And the brain, like a person is upright head, higher than his heart, higher than lower parts of his body, his brain can win. So why do we ever lose? Meaning, how come we ever get past the brain? And unfortunately, the answer is that we can try to trick the brain. It's not so bad. All the justifications that we can come up with about why it's not so bad, and everybody does it, and I'll still be holy, whatever it is, things that we recognize, how a person is able to talk themselves into doing the Aver. So how's he ever going to win? And again, since every game or every event is in this world, and this world is predominated by the stimuli of materialism, and Madison Avenue was constantly appealing to our animal soul. And the fact is, the way we're constructed, we do have to address our animal soul because we have to eat and we have to sleep and we have to take care of our physical self. So how can we ever hope to win? And the answer is, based on the pasuk that we read in from Tehillim, that says, Yamid liyamin evyoin, he stands at the right side, and that's going to become crucial, of the poor one, the destitute one, Lohoshia, to rescue him, mishoifte nafshay. And remember, we looked in the Gemara that word shoifte is commonly mistranslated as ruled by the rulers of his soul, when it should really be the judges of his soul. And the image being a 3-panel system where you have Judge 1 puts forward his vote, Judge 2 puts forward his vote, and if you have a tie, the tie is broken by Judge 3. Now, you have the animal soul that says, do the selfish thing, the godly soul that says, do the godly thing, and they're locked in a deadlock. What's going to break the tie? Hashem himself. Hashem is the third judge who is the tiebreaker. Now, if that's the case, again, how does anybody ever sin? And as we explained, because you have to be receptive to it. A person can offer you help. They can tell you what to do. They can give you direction. But if you don't listen to it, that's where the choice comes. The choice comes to the compliance with the instruction. That's what we have free choice over. Everything else, we don't really have free choice over. Now, based on this, we see that absent this help from Hashem, he might fall into Russia behavior. When I say behavior, I'm including willful thought, spoken word, and deed. That is what he voluntarily chooses to think about, and what he says and what he does. So back to our question here, why do we prefer that the person think of himself like a Russia instead of like the tzaddik? Is because without the help of Hashem, he wouldn't just be like a Russia, he'd be taka a Russia. He would, in fact, be a Russia. So based on this, we're going to now explore how do we bring that help from Hashem into our existence. Just to share a quick story, there was a metaphor about this man, and he's walking in the winter, and he sees this guy who's collapsed, and he comes and he says, how can I save him? And it's this emergency, and he says, God, why didn't you save this person? And God says, I did. I sent you. But you got to be receptive to it. If I'm looking around, right. So how does God send this help to us? So the Alter Rebbe is going to nuance here for the bulk of the remainder of the chapter three different circumstances that a Beinoni might find himself in, again, very generically, but three that we all find ourselves in under varying circumstances, to which Hashem sends help. And the help has to come differently to different people. And again, this is a classic idea that not everybody's going to be receptive to the same form of assistance. This person is inspired by Torah study. This person is inspired by communal obligation. This person is inspired by the beauty of nature, as we'll see. So the Alter Rebbe is going to lay out three very generic and general circumstances the Beinoni will find himself in. And since the animal soul is very antagonistic to any divine inspiration, so it's going to fight back against this divine inspiration. So the divine inspiration has to be attenuated to the circumstance that's going to be meaningful and receptive by or receivable by the Beinoni in that specific circumstance. So as we will lay it out, there are, again, generally three circumstances. One, when he's involved in his regular, ordinary stuff. So the person is doing what they ordinarily do. They're at their job. They're doing whatever it is. And the little golden beans get dangled in front of his eyes, and he becomes easily distracted. How's he going to have the strength in that circumstance? Another is when he's sitting and studying Torah, because even when a person is studying Torah, there can be the temptation for arrogance, for aggression, for dismissiveness, for distraction, and so on. And then when a person is davening, and how even when they're davening, they could potentially be distracted and so forth, and how the divine help will come. Is it more direct, almost like a miraculous quality that falls into his mind? Like, when I say miraculous, meaning it's not consistent with his behavior. So the simplest example, the person is driving and somebody cuts them off and they get angry, or the person is engaged in their profession and there's an opportunity to be lazy, indulgent, dishonest. And again, nothing about his circumstance is going to be rooting for anything other than that, quote unquote. That's what everybody does, and you'll never get caught, and nobody minds, and that's the way it goes, et cetera, et cetera. And then how is the divine help going to come? It's going to be completely inconsistent with his environment. In his Torah study, it might be a little bit more consistent because you are studying Torah, although, again, a person can start to become arrogant. They can start to become self-serving. They can start to become biased in their understanding because they want it to favor the outcome that they're looking for. And then their davening as well. So here we go. Again, we are in the Chitas of the 19th of Teves. I know everyone's got a different publication, so it's a different page in every book. But here we go. Even a person who the study of Torah is his greatest passion. So again, he's studying Torah. So you might think he's studying Torah. What does he need help for? He's studying Torah, he's doing a mitzvah. But again, remember, as we said, that the mitzvah action is not innately a godly thing. There can be a person engaged in the mitzvah action, but they are not doing it in the service of Hashem, and their own self-interest gets mixed in. So again, remember, the Beinoni, in their expressive behavior, they're like the tzaddik, which is why the whole world is saying you must be a tzaddik, because all we ever see is you think, say, and do godly things. So even when he's in the middle of Torah study, and he's learning with great intensity, and he's doing it lishma, which is this very difficult word to translate. It means for the name, Hashem, the root word. But it's a very difficult concept to translate because it doesn't really exist in a secular society. You know, in a secular society, a human society, let's put it that way, a human being responds to incentive. But we are not only human, we have a godly soul. And therefore, we don't need incentive. So why do you do that? So it's a trick question, because once I start to answer, then I'm giving some reason. And then what happens if you take the reason away? Then I'm not doing it. So this exists in a sanctified space. in a God space. It doesn't exist in a human space. It's not humanly possible. It is only godly possible. But we're not only human, we also have a neshama. So it's this loftiest level. Hopefully everybody sort of recognizes at least about what we're talking, if not to be able to put a word on it. So this guy, again, back into the context, he loves to learn Torah. He learns literally day and night. And he does it purely for the sake of Hashem. This is absolutely not evidence. It is not evidence at all. That he has displaced this evil from its origin. It is not even evidence that he has displaced it. Now, if you'll think back to chapter 1, we're going to be getting an answer to another one of our questions about the Beinoni. Hopefully you recall, just to do the setup for you, that in the Talmud's discussion about Beinonim, the Rabbah declares, someone like me is a Beinoni. Now, if you recall in the Gemara we looked in last week, that's not exactly what he said. He didn't say someone like me is a Beinoni. He said someone like us is a Beinoni. So you might parse it and say, well, he didn't mean himself. He meant us. But we know that he did mean himself because of the reaction of his colleague Abaye. When Abaye responded and said, well, in that case, nobody else could be alive because nobody else can approach your stature. And if you're only a Beinoni, then we can't live. So if Rabbah didn't mean himself literally, then Abaye wouldn't have had such a harsh reaction. So the Alter Rebbe paraphrases it by saying someone like me is a Beinoni, when he actually said someone like us is a Beinoni. Now, how could he possibly be a Beinoni? What did we know about Rabbah, if you recall from the first chapter? That he never stopped studying Torah. So if he never stopped studying Torah, isn't he a tzaddik? Well, now we understand why he could consider himself, or he could be someone like me, as a Beinoni. Now, whether or not he was a Beinoni, he didn't say I am a Beinoni, but this model can be Beinoni. Even if all you do all day is learn Torah, you could still be like a Beinoni. Why? Because the internal struggle is still going on. I don't feel that internal struggle, right? Because I have overwhelmed it. I've crowded it out with Torah study, which is a good thing. I mean, that's a healthy thing. Crowd it out, idle hands, workshop, devil, and so on. Meaning, so don't be idle. Be engaged all the time, and you'll crowd it out, crowd it out, crowd it out, crowd it out, crowd it out. So now we understand. Ela yacholiyos, what is possible? Shemahusay vatzmusay, that its very fabric and essence, who betokvoy gvurasay, is just as strong and powerful. Now the word toikef, which we also translate as strong, but in this context it conjures up the image of like holding on to something, like stubborn in that sense. Tokef means to hold on to it with this belligerence. And it's just as strong as it ever was, bimkaima, in its place, that is the animal soul, which is found b'cholol hasmali, on the left side of the heart. So remember the pasuk from Tehillim. Where does he stand, Hashem, in relation to the poor one, the one at the disadvantage? He stands at the right side, right? You may remember that verse. He stands at the right side. The right side is the side of the heart where the godly emotions are. Because remember, we're not against love. We're not against the emotions. We're not saying, well, forget all that emotion. Just use your intellect and override it. We're all for the emotions. Love of Hashem, love of people, love of Torah, love of Eretz Yisrael, et cetera, et cetera. But once we get into that thing of love, it's subjected to the attack of the more powerful loves, the love of selfishness, the love of self, which is on the left side. So even though this person, his passion is Torah, and he in fact puts that passion into play, and he studies Torah day and night only for the sake of Hashem, without any self-interest, that is not evidence at all that he has in any way diminished or displaced his animal soul. What happened then? So how is that? Shalavushav, his garments. Shehem Machar Machshava Dibru Maisa, Shal Nefesh Bahamis, Eina Mislabshim Mamayach Ba'peh Ba'yadayim. His three garments of thought, that is what I decide to willfully think about, say, and do, that are of the animal soul, because remember, the animal soul's got his thoughts, his words, and his deeds, never succeed in conquering the mind, mouth, and hands, and the rest of the body of the person. Now, why not? Why is it that this person is able to fend off the pursuit of the animal soul for dominance over the tools of the mind, the mouth, and the hand? So he's got the garments. That is, the animal soul has his selfish things he wants to think about. How can I manipulate this situation for my benefit? He has the garment of the words. What can I say that will put me in a better light? He has the behavior garment. What can I get, taste, eat, do that will benefit and buttress my identity? But he has no place to put them. Remember the childish analogy of musical chairs. You got two players and only one chair, the animal soul and the godly soul. And every round, it's 50-50. So how can we expect the godly soul to win every round of musical chairs? How is that possible? I mean, again, his animal soul is as aggressive as it ever was. So how can we ever expect that? Answer, Memnei Hashem, it's only because of God. So we are, it's the ultimate illustration of the statement of the Talmud that there are things that God created that he regrets. Now, again, we're putting a human phrase on that. One of them is the Yetzer Hara, meaning how could God regret? He knows what he's doing. However we understand that metaphor, the idea being that it's impossible to defeat it. And again, just use as an analogy, if you go out into the world and you tell people you never go to McDonald's, you turn your phone off 25 hours a day for the whole Shabbos, they literally can't believe that you could do that. It literally feels impossible. And I guess hopefully everybody has something in their lives that they thought, I could never do that. And then they do it. But it feels impossible. Daven every day, keep kosher, whatever it is, each person in their own level. They think that is absolutely impossible. There's no way, to the point that they almost don't believe you. They almost don't believe that you do it because it's so outside, and not because these are evil, self-indulgent pirates. They literally can't believe it. And then we do it. How, Taka, can you do it? The answer is only one thing. It's a miracle from Hashem. God gives you this gift that you are able to do it. You think about physical things, whether it's learn to play the piano or, I don't know, whatever it is, physical health and so on. You think, I can never do that. It's impossible. And the answer is, right, it is humanly impossible, but we are not only human. We have this divine assistance. So this guy who is succeeding, it's only from absolute divine assistance. I mean, just to share one insight, you ask any shliach, what is the key to your success? They will all tell you exactly the same thing. I don't know. It's the Rebbe's bracha. I don't know. I have no idea. I can't do this. I'm not a capable person. I don't know. I could never do this. It's purely the Rebbe's bracha. How do we do it? It's purely Hashem's bracha. That's the only answer. It's purely Hashem's bracha. And that's what the Alter Rebbe says here. Mimnei Hashem, only because Hashem, shenasan shlitu mamshala, that he grants authority and dominion. Now again, remember, authority and dominion means I have to be authoritative and dominating over something else that's not so cooperative. So I am being authoritative and I am being dominant over an enemy. It's not cooperative. But this guy, all he does all day is learn Torah. He's Rabbah. He never distracts himself for a moment. And you're telling me he's struggling just like I'm struggling for my own nonsense? Answer, yes. So how does he do it? It's a miracle from Hashem. So I'll quote Dr. Walder of blessed memory used to say, 99% is Hashem. The 1% that you have to do is to know that it comes from Hashem. That's what you have to do. Your 1% is to know that everything comes from Hashem. I thought that was a beautiful vert. And that's really this idea. What do you have to do? All you got to do, say dismissively, joking, is let Hashem in. If I let Hashem in, what's the opposition to letting Hashem in? The animal soul says, oh no, you let Hashem in, you won't be in charge. You won't be in charge. And if I'm not in charge, I'm going to get hurt. That's the concern. I mean, again, unfortunately, in our world, maybe this is more men than women, we fear that if I allow somebody else, they're going to do it to hurt me, or just for their own selfish aspirations. They're not going to be caring for me. They're going to care about themselves and what they can get from me. And therefore, I become resistant to that welcoming of it. But if we can truly trust Hashem, to truly be able to trust, it's a very, very difficult thing to totally put our trust in that. So this is this idea. What's the process? So again, what is this person doing all day? Studying Torah. So what's his access point for godliness? The intellect. Now, again, this may seem odd, but I guess everybody here can imagine such a thing. A person can be studying Torah and forget that they're talking about godliness. We get so caught up in the narrative, in the poetry, in the legality, that we could forget that we're pursuing godliness here. Just like a parent and a child could be playing a game together, and they get so caught up in the game, they forgot they're playing with the child. But at the same time, if all they're talking about is it's your move, at some point, roll the dice and move your play around the board. So there has to be both. So again, a person can become so caught up in Torah study that they forgot that they're pursuing godliness, and they're so, like I said, consumed with the legality or the poetry or the narrative that they lost the kedusha, they lost the holiness. So this is the portal of entry for the godliness to the scholar. That the godliness comes through the intellect. Therefore, nefesh elikis shebemoach. The nefesh elikis, the godly soul, right? That's the ally to Hashem. That's the connection to the infinity of Hashem that can overcome every delicious distraction that seems to block my field of vision. We have the ability to look up and see beyond it, even though it's so tempting. So where does it access the godly soul? So the godly soul is most comfortable in the intellect, right? Moshelis bir katana, and from there it will exert its authority over the small city. You hopefully remember that metaphor, that we are like a city being battled over by two kings, the animal soul and the godly soul, in pursuit of complete and total dominance of all of its assets. Evrei haguf kulam, all of the body parts. Shiyu levush merkava l'shleisha levusha shislapsh b'hem shem achshav divrei ma'aseh shatayig mitzvos haTorah. That it should be a garment and a tool, chariot, literally, that is a tool in the hands of the driver, exclusively to the three garments of thought, speech, action of the 613 mitzvahs of Torah. So again, we're not looking for nice people. We're looking for people to do nice things. And here's where the Alter Rebbe makes this seemingly pretty enormous concession. I mean, again, I imagine everybody has heard this phrase, well, he's a good person. And I'm not denying that. We would essentially argue everyone is a good person. Even the most vile criminal has good in him. He has the godly soul. Our pushback is, we're not that interested in good people. I mean, we're not against it, and we want to pursue it, but we are really interested in people who do good things. Now, we can counter that argument and say, well, what do you mean he's a good person? He wants to yell and scream at me. Yeah, but in fact, he was kind to you. So he's not a good person. He just does good things. Now, again, we hope not to trade one for the other. It's not either you're a good person or you do good things. But our starting point is doing the good things. And then we're working on the being the good person. And know ye that even if you're not a good person, you can still do good things. Not only can you, you must and are expected to all the time. And we do want to work on your being a good person. And this is crucial because we might read this as, well, you're just destined to always be unhappy. You're always going to want X, but you're always going to do Y. And therefore, you're always going to have this sense of loss. You're always going to have this sense of all you're missing out on. And again, at an oversimplification, we're all familiar with the guy who always, he took off for Shabbos, but all he talked about was how difficult it was. Well, this is not a way to win friends and influence people, and you're not likely to pass this on to the next generation if all you can talk about is how unpleasant it is. So Rabbah becomes the perfect model. He's not an unhappy guy. He's not like, I learned Torah 24/7 and I overcome my desire to be self-indulgent. He can still be in alliance, meaning, again, this is not a cheer for misery. It's a ongoing sense of it. And again, it's very un-American because the Western mentality is, what do I got to do? And then you won't bother me anymore. How much I got to do, and then you'll leave me alone. And as we know, on the contrary, the more you do, the more that's expected of you. All the times people came to the Rebbe, I did this great thing. Great, now do twice as much. It's not because what you did is not good, but doing good things should spur you to do more good things. That's the nature of infinity. And the animal soul tries to use our accomplishments against us. Look at all the good things you did. Take the rest of your life off. Again, that's a not uncommon mentality. And we know it doesn't work. Even in practicality, it doesn't work. So here we go. Aval muhusavas musoshel nefesh elikis ein lo shitum amshelas muhusavas musoshel nefesh abahamis bebeinini. However, the very essence and fabric of his godly soul has zero authority over the essence and fabric of his animalistic selfish soul. His animating selfish soul is just as ferocious as it ever was. It is not at all diminished. It is just as eager and desirous as it ever was. Ki'im, except, and here's where you get relief. When? Unless when his neshama gets this booster, this inspiration, and when he gets this inspiration, he gets uplifted to the point that he can't even imagine the selfishness of his animating soul. When is this? These are called itim mizumanim. Translation, designated times. In the singular, it will be eis mizuman, special times. Now, what are these special times? How do I sign up for these special times? I want these special times. Answer, the Alter Rebbe says, an example, not the only, an example, kamoi, for example, but it's not only. B'shas hatfilah, when a person davens, ukyetzibah, are there such times? So hopefully a person experiences this even more often, but again, it's a start. So I go to daven, and when I'm davening, I get so uplifted that now I can't even imagine that I would be distracted to the point that my animal soul doesn't even bother with me because he knows he's not going to get me. So again, everybody, hopefully, I hope everybody can find some moment. This, again, davening is an example. It's not limited to davening. It's an example. That's an example when this could happen. Or it could be some other time, each person in their own world and their own level. So I like to use this simple analogy. At Kol Nidre, if somebody would come in with food, I mean, what are you doing? It's Kol Nidre. It's like disgusting. When we get to Ne'ilah, well, what time is it? Yeah, I may start to wane. But if we could be so charged that we are at such a lofty, spiritually intense moment that we can't imagine anything but that lofty, intense spiritual moment, in that moment, my animal soul is gone. It's like not there. Now, unfortunately, it's not gone forever. It just says, well, forget it. I'm not going to win this one. It's like trying to be a Republican mayor in Chicago. Don't even bother. What's the point? You're not even going to bother. So the other guy goes, oh, we got it easy, right? But remember, he's not giving up. He's just reallocating his resources somewhere else. He's conceded this one, but he's going to use it against you. See, I let you daven and call nidre. Now let's go and be angry, annoyed, petty, or whatever it is. See, you're a holy person. Look how beautifully you daven. So we got three circumstances. We got circumstance number one, when the person is engaged in his regular, ordinary stuff. He's eating, doing regular human stuff. He needs a little bit more of a direct divine booster. And again, people who live out there in the world of falseness can experience this. Everyone around them is engaged in every kind of indulgence, and he's like, I don't do that. I'm a Jew. Man, I have my yarmulke and tzitzis on. I'm not doing that, even though it looks fun. I'm not doing it. Then he's got his Torah study. Well, he's learning where, again, his animal soul can come and start to distract him and make his learning about his own selfish understanding, etc. And the pushback is, hey, my mind is receptive to the infinity of Hashem, because this is one of the reasons, it's the curious point. We are taught that one of the reasons why the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed was because they didn't make the blessing before they studied Torah. So we go like, whoa. I mean, okay. But and then why not? Like, why? Well, one of the interpretations is not they forgot to read page 6 in the Siddur. What it means is they disconnected their Torah study from godliness. It wasn't just that they forgot to say morning brachas. It's that they disconnected the idea that Torah study is godly. And it became an academic pursuit. They pulled the neshama out of it, as we would say. They forgot that it's a godly thing. So that could happen during Torah study. So what's the venue of the divine assistance? It comes through the Torah study. And then we have here when a person is davening, he's so ginned up that he can't even imagine anything other than godliness. But caution, because that davening is going to end, and if he's not careful, he's going to start to believe himself to be immune to his godliness. So here we go. But here he talks about it. At that moment, while he's got this excited davening, it's not just that his godly soul is dominating and overpowering his animal soul. Like it says, one nation against another will battle. Remember, this is what God told Rivka when she felt this struggle within herself. And she thought, well, I guess this means I'm a failure because I used to be with bad people. And then, of course, I felt temptation for bad things. But now I'm married to Yitzchak and I live in the house of Avram. Now I should only feel good things. How come I'm still feeling bad things? Answer, because there's two nations within you. Kishazek comes and noifol, kishazek kam chulu, that when one rises, the other falls. But he only falls. He's not going away. So just because I defeated my animal soul once doesn't mean it's not coming back. Anyone who's ever started a diet, just because I was good on it for one day, doesn't mean tomorrow I'm not thinking about ice cream. That when the godly soul intensifies itself and strengthens itself, and it dominates the animating self-serving soul, b'makar hagvudes, and what's the mechanism, what's the meeting point? Where does the godly soul, in this context, defeat the animal soul? In the bina, in the analysis. Remember that in the process of how a thought is developed, we have what we call chachma. I like the word imagination, receptivity, whatever word you want to use. It's where all ideas are welcome. And I'm not locked into, well, this is how we've always done it. But that means, that's a breeding ground for the animal soul to put in some evil ideas. Because you don't even think about it? What are you, so close-minded? That's why they said about Amazon and Apple. People thought they weren't going to be the biggest thing. People said, no, you're always going to have to do things this way. So the ungodly ideas find their entry level in the generosity of chachma, of imagination. All ideas are welcome. Where do we winnow out the godly ideas from the ungodly ideas? In bina. Bina is where there is gevura. You're in, you're out. You're appropriate, you're inappropriate. You're in alignment, you're in misalignment. You're welcome, you're not. Shehi bina, that is in bina. And what is the process? What is the process in bina? That we have to think, does this promote my desire to be aligned with the infinity of Hashem? All ideas are welcome. Crazy ideas. But you could have crazy ideas like FedEx, and you could have crazy ideas like Coke too. You don't know at Chachma. It's at Bina. What's the measuring stick? Does this thought promote my love for Hashem? If it promotes my love for Hashem, I align myself with it. And then it makes me fired up and excited about something. Just like if I can talk to you about an idea, you can become excited about the idea. Whether it's a philosophical idea, it's a practical idea, you start to get all excited about it. It excites your heart. This is the key to Chabad, that the intellect and the heart operate in conjunction. We're not like the silo, just intellect and now just heart. Now I put away my intellect and now I do my heart. One influences the other. So when we start to think about that, this aligns me with the infinity of Hashem, and that's what I want to be associated with. Remember, love doesn't mean I love it like I love swimming. It means I want to be associated with it. Yes, there are more intense levels of love. And it fires up the right side, remember the right side of the heart where the godly love is. And that results in Vazaskafia, I push down the Sitra Achra Shabachol Asmali, the antagonism, which is on the left side of the heart, which just says, I see it, I want it, I reach for it. It is not completely gone. Even though it feels like it's gone, it's not gone. It's still there, it's just been pushed into a corner. But it's not gone. And given the chance, it's roaring back. And that's the message of being like the Russia. Because when is it gone? All of a tzaddik. It's only a tzaddik. Shenemar boy that it says regarding the tzaddik, that my heart is empty within me. That David HaMelech emptied his heart of his animalistic impulses. He fasted to the point that he no longer had any desire for it. It no longer held any attraction or distraction to him. It was totally eradicated. He was disgusted by it. And again, the tzaddik is measured not just by what he loves, but what he hates. He's disgusted by it. So if your child is allergic to peanuts, you may hate peanuts. You're disgusted by it, the mere fact that it comes your way. And again, it's also linked to the intellect, the simplest example. If I show you chametz today, you might like it, you might not like it. If I show it to you on Pesach, you're disgusted by it. You have a visceral emotional reaction to it. I like eating, not on Yom Kippur. So again, the intellect does change the character. But the Beinani, which is our aspiration, and even that, not so much, but not, we'll tell you that later, but I'm just telling you, because we've read this before. We know in chapter 19, the Alter Rebbe also sort of lets it slip that even Beinani is an aspiration, but at least it's an aspiration. Hu derech mashlo ka'adam sheyoshin. It's like the animal soul is asleep. Sheyochalachso mishinasa, he can wake up. Kachara bebeinani, so too the Ra and the Beinani. Hu kiyoshin b'chol hasmali. It's like it's been put to sleep. Ashas kriyishma tefillah sheliboy bori ba'ava Hashem. When the heart is on fire with this love of Hashem. So it gives up. It says, look, I know I'm not going to get you to eat on Yom Kippur. I know I'm not going to get you to think about selfishness when you're... So he gives up. He concedes that. But it's strategic because he's coming back tomorrow. And on the contrary, he's going to use it against you. Look how holy you were. Look how beautifully you daven. You deserve to indulge yourself. Look at all the good you did. Again, this is the classic illustration. Holiness begets holiness. Selfishness begets selfishness. How does the animal soul deal with the person who's so intensely enthusiastic about his holiness? He uses it against him. He says, you see how holy you are? You deserve a break today. You deserve to sleep in tomorrow. Whereas the godly soul says, man, that was great. Let's go do another one. So it's coming back. And that's why we are forever warned to be like the Beinani, to never think ourselves immune to that temptation. And that's why Rabbah presented himself as a Beinani. Afle pasuk pumi migirsa v'teres Hashem chafetza yom v'layla b'chafitza b'chashika b'chuka b'nefesheka l'Hashem b'aver rabba k'rishas kriya shmo tefillah. Even though he never stopped studying Torah, and he served Hashem with all of these different descriptives of passion, a love that comes from his essence, a consumed with love, inspired love, and never satisfied love, an immeasurable love. All of this passion, all of this. Why is he only like a Beinoni? Because he thought that I am kibashas kriya shmo tefillah. It's like I'm davening. What did Rabbah do? Well, he studied Torah. We had in Pirkei Avos yesterday, do not judge a person until you've been in his place. Because you don't know what his place is. If his place requires him to go out into the market, where he's got to deal with temptation and distraction and liars and cheaters. There's a story told, maybe it's even a true story, that in the lifetime of the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, his son, who wasn't yet the Rebbe, obviously, reprimanded a certain chassid for his, skipping out of shul early. And the guy sort of pushed back and he said, what do you know? You sit here and learn Torah all day. I got to go and deal with all of these customers, and they're drunk and they're immoral and immodest and vile and so on. And then this chassid got summoned in by the Alter Rebbe. He thought, I'm in trouble now. And the Alter Rebbe said, thank you for making my son a chassid. Right, that's the point. Sure, if you sit in the yeshiva all day, you think, what's so hard? My pet peeve, people say, don't tell me you can't do it. I do it. Oh. So everyone should be able to play the piano? What do you mean you can't play the piano? I play the piano. Don't tell me you can't play the piano. I play the piano. I speak Hebrew. I can daven. I can do this. What do you mean you can't? Right? So he's got a challenge, but he's surrounded by holiness. So he's saying, I don't know. If you took me out of the yeshiva and you dropped me in the middle of the marketplace, who knows where I'd be? I could be overwhelmed by distraction. That's his issue. He was like a person who was in this constant state of intense godliness, like when the Beinoni is davening. And this is what the meaning of the statement in the Gemara that says, like it says, Halavai, she adam kol yom kulei. We wish that a person would daven all day. Now, this doesn't mean we wish he was reading the Siddur all day. We means, wouldn't it be beautiful if we could be in this level of absolute intense alignment with the infinity of Hashem all day? And again, I know people think I'm kidding. That's why we love Yom Kippur. That's it. You don't have nothing. You don't even have to be social. You don't have to do anything. You can just completely bury your nose in the machzor and not come up for air. You don't have to worry about anything. The world goes, comes, goes, cars, this, that. It's not. You get to be. Now, we start to understand why Noah didn't want to leave the ark, why the Jews didn't want to leave the wilderness, why Aaron's two sons didn't want to even be in this world. Who wants to be in this world? Wouldn't it be great if you could just be in this spiritual bliss? Sure, I love it. Sign me up. Well, that's not Hashem's mission. Hashem says, get out there and make the world a godly place. That's why we're born crying. That's why the neshama is coming into the world. Hashem says, come here, Sparky. This is what I want you to do. Be good and not evil. You're going into a world that's filled with all that. And they don't, not because they're bad people. They're going to say, you're a tzaddik, you're done, cruise. No, be in your eyes like the Rasha. And again, why are we born against our will and we die against our will? Who wants to come into this world? Can't we just stay in the trove of souls? Can't we just be in this lofty spiritual state? Can't we just learn Tanya all day? Wouldn't that be dandy? Yes, except you got to go in the world and make it a godly place. Why? Because that's what Hashem wants. This level that the Beinoni experiences when he davens, this total overwhelming love of Hashem, where he can't even imagine, he doesn't even speak the language of anything that comes across his field of vision of temptation. It's totally foreign. If I hear a little Spanish and I speak English, I maybe pick up a word or two. But if they're speaking Mandarin, I don't know what they're saying. It's totally irrelevant. It's not a distraction. So this Beinoni is at such an intense level of love of Hashem, he can't imagine anything else but that. At this level, where the person is totally aligned with Hashem, relative to a tzaddik who serves Hashem without any form of, so to speak, interruption, He's got perfect consistency. You can't call this, and here's the key word, true avodah. Now, this is a very sort of emotional thing. What do you mean? You think I'm lying? But it's important. When we say true, we mean it's true under all circumstances. So we know that there are situational truths. I know that's what everybody tells Rabbi Shimon why they're in Stateville. But what we mean by situational truths are, when I say that water boils at 212 degrees, that's a situational truth. That's only at sea level. But on a mountain or in a valley, it's going to change. So it's not untrue. It's not a lie. It's true in the moment. So when the Beinoni in that moment is feeling this alignment with Hashem, it may not be that way forever. He's going to change, and life is going to change. So the tzaddik can be certain of the future. But we are always told, don't be so certain. Don't be so sure of yourself that you sort of slack off. And again, we're not here to beat up on the Beinoni. We're here to tell him why he's got to remain forever vigilant. Because after he davens, he's going to come, I don't want to say crashing down, but he's coming down from that spiritual high. He's coming down. Viksiv, like it says, that true lips are forever. And everything that's temporary is a kind of falseness. Well, when we're saying it's a lie, the whole thing is a lie. What's the point? So don't worry. Vafel became the guy Madregas Habeinani Nikra Avodah Tama be'emes lamito shalem ish kifi madregasai madregas Habeinani. Here, the Alter Rebbe really lays down one that's going to make people upset. The Alter Rebbe says, our relationship with Hashem is subjective and not objective. I'm not outrunning you, and I'm not trying to reach something. To my level, to the level of the Beinoni, this is true to who he is. This is true to who he is. And this is that idea that we're not doing some sort of objective evaluation of my service of Hashem. That we would say that since the Beinoni has highs and lows, we can say that he's truly in total alignment with Hashem because he has highs and he has lows. And only the tzaddik is forever at this untouchable level. But we do say it's emes because it's true to him. That's his nature. That's his identity. That's the nature of human beings, is to have growth. And in order to have growth, there's got to be what appears to be a regression. Yesterday's success is tomorrow's starting point. Again, here's the fear. The fear is, I'm going to go into Shul on Yom Kippur. I'm going to feel this great loftiness. And so I know it's going to end. I know Yom Kippur is going to be over. And I know I'm going to get back into my routines. I know I got to go back to work on Monday. And I know that I'm going to be dealing with the same annoying coworkers and the same petty quarreling and the same temptation. So what's the point? Why should I get myself so excited for godliness? Who am I kidding? I know on Monday I'm going to be the same petty person I always was. And this is what the Alter Rebbe says. In that moment, it is true. And again, there's going to be some residue. You think you're going to be the same petty person. You're not going to be the same petty person. You'll be a little less distractible, a little less irritable, because there is a residue. It doesn't go away entirely. You can hold on to it somewhat. And that's really what we're going to devote ourselves to over the next few chapters. How do I hold on to at least some remnant of that the next time I get some annoyance coming across my field of vision? Why? Why is it true? Because it's within the power of his neshama. Lachzor la'oira b'chinas ava zoy la'olam b'skabrusa b'shas hatfila miyoyma. He always can recall it. It's there. So Monday comes and I'm in the office and everyone's yelling at me and all this pettiness, but I can remember when that moment, when I felt that loftiness with Hashem, like Yosef HaTzadik, who remembered his father, he remembered the history, and that gave him the resilience. At that moment, at least according to one interpretation, he was fully on board. What's the point? I'm never going to be rejoined with my family. Everybody hates me. The nice guy sold me into slavery. The other ones want to kill me. Every time I do something good, I just wind up getting further punished and back into the prison. This whole thing is hopeless. Why should I not indulge myself? But he had that memory. He had that remnant of when he was in alignment, and that helped him across the finish line. So, are we promising you no struggles? We are not promising you that. On the contrary, what are we telling you? That if you can string together some of these moments, they don't just go away when you put the sitter back on the shelf. They stay with you at least enough to get you across the finish line at some future point. At least enough you can hold on to it. You can reflect back on it. Mida yom b'yom, every day, if you make yourself receptive to it. It's not going to happen by itself, but it's there, and you can call upon it to keep you stronger in that moment of weakness. Again, according to your own level, you got to come up with some strategy to reach back into that moment and find that godliness. Because the characteristic of Yaakov is truth, and truth means it's true under every circumstance. And this is a reference to the building of the Mishkan, where they had all of the beams and they had one rod that ran straight through across. So it had to be obviously in perfect alignment at every level, or else it's not going to fit through. So this becomes a metaphor for truth. It's truth, like we would say, from top to bottom, beginning to end, this kind of thing. B'chol ma'ila madrega mavriach toich nekuda emsoy she nekuda b'chinas midas emes shalo or midas emes hinachal b'meitzorim ve'ein lo shir l'mayla droima milas b'chol ma'ila madrega shalamatehen ka'ayin legabi ma'ila madrega shalamayla mihen. So it goes through at every point. So too, if we can hold on to those moments of davening, those moments, again, davening is the example, it doesn't have to be. Those moments when we felt such total alignment with the infinity of Hashem, and we can hold on to it throughout all of those circumstances that come our way. It is indefatigable, because that is the character of MS. It never can be defeated. It can be blocked. It can be distracted. We can allow it to fall through every moment of our existence if we will make ourselves receptible to it. And every level, we got to have a greater level than the previous level. And that's the other aspect of it. And rather than seeing this whole thing as one big nuisance, why do I always have to work so hard? This is the point. Yesterday's accomplishment is today's starting point. So that may feel annoying because we live in a world, you know what I did last year? You know, we've all met that guy who's still talking about 30 years ago, this great success he had. So like, come on, man, it's time to move on. But we don't like to, because yesterday it was a great accomplishment. But today, that's just the starting point. You know, if you're driving from California to New York, yesterday you drove 10 hours. When you wake up today, you're starting right where you did yesterday is just step one of today. And that's the message, right? We're not looking for what do I got to do so you don't bother me anymore. You do like we know, that what is yesterday's highest point is today's starting point. You just finished fourth grade, now you got to go to fifth grade. And that doesn't run out. So whereas the animal soul says, you know, how much more I got to do, and then I can just cruise, then I can just float. That's not what the godly soul is looking for. He's not looking for what's the least amount I got to do so you won't yell at me. And on the contrary, that's the sign of progress, that every day we take on a new challenge. You know, Tzvi Freeman always said, you don't comply with the Rebbe, you try and keep up. Now, he's 80 years old, 85 years old. It's like, when do we get to just chill out? Well, that's not what it means to be alive. Life means to growth. And that's encouraging, because what's our biggest fear? You know, you get to a certain age, you start worrying that I'm not going to be able to grow. You know, you're at a certain point in life, you think, oh, all I want to do is lay on the beach. Then you get to a certain point in life and you're terrified that all you're going to be able to do is lay on the beach and not be able to do anything. Like it says, the feet are the highest level of the previous stage, and then you move on to the next level. So the message of the Beinoni is, you are like the Russia. You still have the struggle. There are opportunities to never have the struggle. There are moments that you will feel this total alignment. And don't be afraid, well, I don't want to do that because then I'm going to be disappointed. You can hold on to those. You can take them with you. And they can be little spurts to get you past the next challenge. And rather than seeing challenges as a form of failure or a form of disappointment, how come I still got to work so hard? See them as opportunities and indicators that you are still fully engaged in life.